Well, happy Monday night to all of you out there in social media world. This is Brother Dana coming to you from Chicago. I want to say a special thank you and hello to my Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters. Again, I appreciate you more than you will know, and just the overwhelming love and support that I receive from you in the postings and the things that you say. I just really want to say thank you. And if anybody in my white family wants to wonder why I become a race trader, if you would experience the love and the embrace that I have gotten from what you call our black brothers and sisters, you would know why nothing will ever get me to go back. As you can see, I got my makeshift Nike hat on. I can't even believe I don't even have a Nike hat, but hey, I do have some Nike shoes. But all joking aside, I wanted to go into a couple of things, but I really want to share with you, when I say that all of this, with the protesting and the shooting and just everything that is happening to you, my black brothers and sisters who are realizing you are the true Hebrew Israelites, is based out of fear. And I know that my people are fearful. And I came across this picture on YouTube tonight. And so if you look at that and read it, it says, unemployed, need job, good on my knees. What draws people to be just this cruel and ignorant? And it has to come from something very deep, which is a hatred, and it is also a fear. And I got this, like I said, I can't go through all of the messages, especially on YouTube. And Facebook, I try, but again, if you want to get in touch with me, go to my webpage and do a contact form, and I will definitely respond to you. But I got this, and I happened to read it, and it was from a white guy, and this is what he has to say, and this was one of the comments under the video I did today. And he said, this is it. Every time Hebrews get freedom, they turn to wanting to destroy and enslave everyone else. I guarantee if us whites died off, Mexicans and Asians will be their next target. Why can't you be free without attacking everyone else? And he's talking to you, my black brothers and sisters, or you Hebrews. Yes, us whites have problems. Help us fix them. I won't go there. You all talk so much and leave us friendly whites effed up when we need you the most. Okay? So keep talking your most high BS. When they're done with us, you're next. You see who's against you yet? The entertainment industry. But right now they're focused on your white friends like this guy. It may be a good time to start helping and quit narrating. I don't understand some of that, but I understand the spirit behind all this, and it's fear. And when whites want to say that I'm lying, that they do not fear you as blacks, what they're saying is actually a lie to God, knowing that you are the true Hebrew Israelites, because Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 10 says that outside of the curse, it says that all the peoples of the earth will see that you are called by my name of the Most High, and they will be afraid of you. So now that you are beginning to build up, and as he mentioned over and over, put away this Hebrew BS. Stop talking about this Hebrew. Why? Because it is innate in us Gentiles that we fear you. And now that we're coming to understand who you are, and you are understanding who you are, and you're beginning to rise up, we are automatically going to start fearing you, whether or not my white Gentile family recognizes who you really are. Because it's innate in us. If not, then Yah or God himself is a liar. Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 10. So all the peoples of the earth will see that you are called by the name of the Most High, and they will be afraid of you. When Joshua went to battle and destroy the city of Jericho, did not Rahab said, "My people have heard about your God, and we shudder in fear." But yet, instead of repenting and acknowledging, they remained tied up in that city, hoping that their wall will keep them in control, or at least not allow you to have control. So the thing I want you to say to all of these, my white family haters, is, I'm sorry you fear us. I promise you they're going to say that's not true. But I just gave proof in Scripture. So when they come out against you, apologize and just say, I'm sorry you fear us. Anyway, before I end, I wanted to give another story about, I can take this off now. Most of you have just gotten to know me in these last couple of years, but this journey started nearly 25 years ago. And I wanted to tell you a story about a young man named Joe. I was at Moody Bible Institute for the first 2 years, I was asked to be a youth pastor at this church. And it used to be a rather white, large church. And then in the East Rogers Park community here in Chicago. And it's on the north side. And then what eventually happened was blacks and minorities started to move into East Rogers Park, which then caused the majority of the white to do what we call the Great White Flight Syndrome. They all moved out to the western Rogers Park location. But they continued to come back to this church to worship. But over 30 years, 40 years, the church began to die because the people that were living around the church were not people they wanted inside the church. They were black. And so they asked me as a Moody student to come and start up a youth group there. Well, when I would leave the train and to walk to the church, I had to walk through Morse Avenue. And at that time, there was lots of gang members, especially they used to be called the Farwell Boys and stuff. And so as I walked, I would begin to act on my stereotypes and say, well, these young black men are out on the street. I'm sure they would love to come to a church and play basketball. So I took an old fellowship hall that they used to have monthly new members meetings. But because the church was in such disarray, there was things up on that stage in this gym fellowship hall was so dilapidated that when it rained outside, it rained on the inside. It hadn't been used for years. So I put up 2 basketball rims, and I just simply began to invite young men and women, but specifically young men, to come to the church to play ball. Well, at first, nobody came for months. And then at times when I thought it was ready to throw in the towel, all of a sudden God, or now Yah, would bring somebody in that would encourage me to stay, so I would stay. Well, throughout the winter, because they couldn't go to the parks to play basketball, and word got out that the church was open for ball, young men would come in. And at first I was so scared and intimidated by the young men that were coming into the church, I just sat back and let them play ball. And then finally God spoke to me, Yah spoke to me and said, young man, they're never going to hear the good news. They're never going to hear what they need to build themselves up unless you share it. And so I got into the middle of the floor. I remember this clearly. I said, okay, guys, we're going to have Bible study. Well, guess what? Within minutes, there was not one young person left in the church. They all ran out. And so for about 3 to 4 months, I came to this church every week, and I'd open up the doors, and I would sit in the gym, and nobody showed up, and nobody showed up, and nobody showed up, and nobody showed up. And after about 3 to 4 months, I thought, well, maybe this isn't for me. The church was asking me how many kids are coming to the youth group. How come they're not coming to Sunday school? But again, every time I thought I was on the wrong path, the Most High would bring something in to say, stay. Well, by the time that next winter came, the church was filled, and then I would say, let's have Bible study, and maybe out of, the 50, 60 young men playing, I would have 5 or 6 that would stay. And then when I started sharing about the Bible, and let me know, at that time I was very naive, very ignorant, very white in my thinking and in my ways of doing things. Some of the young men would say, "You can shove that blank blank, we're Mohammed, we don't want you," and they ran back out of the church. But there would always be a few young men that would come to play ball. And eventually there was a young man by the name of Joe. And I believe he was 13 or 14 years old at the time. He had been kicked out of several middle schools or schools up to that point. He didn't have the support of a mother and a father. But he would stay for the basketball. And little by little, those that stayed, we began to build relationships and we began to open up and share different things. Well, that following next summer, which would have been almost 2 years into, I had now graduated from Moody and I had just moved to Rogers Park to continue working at this church, even though I was paid maybe $200 a month. I wanted to stay. And so I would say, within those first few months of summer, my car was broken into and vandalized probably 8-9 times. By the time it stopped, my car had been vandalized and broken into 12 times. I remember one Christmas Eve, I stayed here in Chicago so that I could go and spend Christmas at the time when I was celebrating it with the inmates at Cook County Jail. And so I got up early Sunday morning, and the superintendent of the jail allowed me on that day because he saw my faithfulness coming, and he said, if anything I can do, let me know. Well, the guys would love to have some out in the world food. So I asked superintendent if I could do that, and he said, "I'll meet you halfway." Well, eventually he paid for all the food. But on Christmas Day, I would bring them Popeyes and all the fixings and sides that they wanted. And we would fellowship. And I got to learn what I know to this day. And so when I got out to my car, here I realized that my white car had blue spray paint all over it. All kinds of words saying, "Get out of here, we don't want you, we hate you." But I jumped into that car because I figured, look, the paint's dry now. I jumped into the car and I drove down the Cook County Jail. And this is the faithfulness of the Most High. Do you know that when I got there, one of the guards that saw me coming in on a regular basis looked at me and he said, "Do you have an ex-girlfriend or somebody that's a little angry at you?" And I said, "No, I don't know who did this." He said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know, turn into my insurance." He says, "Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do." Here he had a good friend that owned a mechanic shop. And he called his good friend and he said, "Look, I got one of the chaplains here and his car got spray painted blue. Is there anything we can do?" And he said, "Well, was it within 24 hours? Yes." Said, "Tell him to drive it on over to the shop." He says, I'm here for a few more hours. We went over there and he took out this liquid and he rubbed all the blue paint off my car, except for just a little bit on the side view mirror. But that was left there so that at times when I would look at my mirror and I see those little spots of overspray blue paint, it would remind me of the faithfulness of the Most High that we serve. So after all of this took place, I actually ended up having a brain aneurysm, and I had, which turned into a light stroke, and I was hospitalized for about 6 days. And when I had returned, I brought home with me finally my puppy, and I couldn't go back to work yet for about another week. So on Monday, I decided to get up and walk over to where my job was. But before I walked, the doorbell rang. Well, I lived on the third floor with a storefront on the main level. And a lot of times my boys, if they were going to school or something and somebody began to chase them, they would ring my doorbell, I would let them up, and then I'd end up taking them to school. Well, that's what I thought. So I came walking down expecting to see Joe or some other of the guys saying, "Hey, we need a ride, Pastor." But I didn't notice anybody, and I felt kind of weird, and I hope everybody's okay. I went back up, and I left to go to the job, and about an hour and a half later, I came back. And when I came back, my home had been burglarized. And the first thing that they took was my puppy. And at that point, I remember falling kind of to my knees and seeing that my car had been broken into, and now that I was robbed, I thought, this isn't the place for me. And I began to weep. And I picked up the phone and I said, Mom, I said, I need to come home. And she started crying and she said, next time they're going to steal you and that's why you shouldn't be there. And as I hung up the phone, somebody knocked at my door. And then Joe came in. Joe, at this point, was coming into my house to walk my dog if I was at work for long extended times. And he said, I already heard what happened to you. And he says, I know you're going to leave us like everybody else. And he said some choice words. He took some keys and he threw them at me. And he ran out the door. It was at that point where I called my mom back. And I said, Mom, I said, it's not God that's asking me to leave. It's the enemy wanting me to go. And I said, I can't go. That was the turning point in my outreach in Rogers Park. I called Joe and I said, Joe, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here. And him and Alan and Julius and Brian, they all got together because I had to move. I found out later that it was, this is God's goodness and Yah's blessing. It was a white man that orchestrated me getting robbed. He was a drug dealer also in the neighborhood. So when everybody would say, see, that's why you shouldn't be in a black community, all I had to say, well, it wasn't a black man that robbed me. It was one of us. And so all these young men came over because the cops were telling me I needed to move. They were actually trying to take my life. And so I had the state's attorney come to my job for evacuation plan in case they tried to come to my job to get me. Eventually they tried to come back and they were put back in prison. They ended up serving 13 years in prison for what they did to me and tried to do to me. I also have to say that next door to my apartment was a first lady, and the pastor had passed away, and they had an elderly son that time was probably 40 years old, but he reminded me exactly of the man from the Green Mile. And when I got robbed and I sat in my room and I looked at the empty crate of my puppy and I began to weep, he came in and he was weeping, saying, please forgive me, I tried to stop him. He said, I tried to stop him, Pastor. I tried to stop him. And I assured him that I didn't want him to get hurt. And, and then I shared some of the other story of what happened with Joe. But because of all of that happening, the cops recommended that I move immediately. So these boys came, they packed me up and helped me move everything in one day. Because I had just gotten out of the hospital with a brain aneurysm, I wasn't able to do very much. I got out on a Friday, and that following Friday, the boys were packing me up to move me 6 blocks away. And somebody said, you're a fool to stay in the neighborhood. I said, no, I would be a fool not to. And again, it was from that point that my ministry began to take off. But I wanted to just dwell on one person, Joe. Joe was the young man that started to stay. Joe was the young man that threw the keys and said, I'll know you'll leave us like everybody else does, and said some choice words and ran off. Well, this is a picture of Joe a few years after that. Unfortunately, this is a location of one of my other boys in our cell that was like a son of mine that was gunned down. So Joe and I went out there with his mother to clean up the blood because that was bothering her. And then we put up the flowers for Narcel. Narcel was one that was coming off the street, came off the street, was going back to get his GED, and was planning on getting married. Well, this here is Narcel's daughter. Brooklyn was born almost 2 or 3 weeks after Narcel was shot and killed. I had the privilege of dedicating Brooklyn. This is Brooklyn's mother. This is about 7 years ago. Brooklyn is now a sophomore in college, and Joe Pruitt, the young man that you saw here, took upon himself to mentor and be the father for this young lady who is now in college and with her beautiful mother. Not only did Joe Pruitt do that, I moved here to the west side. Joe happened to move down to the west side to his grandmother's house after he graduated from high school. Well, my neighbor had several boys that I began to mentor and work with, but the youngest one was Nathan, and Nathan had a desire to play football. Joe was excellent at football. So Joe got connected with Nathan and began to mentor him and help him with his football. Nathan ended up getting a full ride at Ball State University. And here you see Joe, you see myself, and you see Nathan as he graduated from Ball State University. He is still successful to this day, doing incredible things, getting his master's. And then there comes Joe Pruitt with Joe Jr. Joe Jr. is now about 7 years old. And Joe, actually his name's not Joe Jr., but I call him Joe Jr. Joe already has a nest egg put away for him that his first year of college is already almost paid for, savings from his father. And yes, I get the opportunity to enjoy the fruit of the labor. And so I look back at all the stuff that took place, and it was all preparation to prepare me for what the Most High has called for me and is ordained for me to do now. And I share these stories because Joe and he is my son. He is my son. I got to know him very well. As his junior and senior year, he got accepted into a private high school where he played football. And many days, 3 to 5 days a week, I would get up early and take him to school, and we would talk and we would talk and share. And today he has his bachelor's degree in business. He's helping to run a not-for-profit business, and eventually when the mentoring program is really up and running, Joe Pruitt wants to oversee it all because he has such a heart and a love for kids that there would be no man better than him to run it. So this is just another one of my stories and of my experiences that I am privileged to have. And I employ to all of you out there, to my Hebrew brothers and sisters, I believe this, that if every young man out on the street or every young lady in a place she shouldn't be would have one person that loves them to death, we'd put a lot of those individuals that are in jail into some incredible places in society. And that is what's going to change. That's part of this movement that I want to do, is giving us the tools and with finances to be able to not just volunteer, because we all have to make a living, but to make a living doing the work of the Most High. And more information will be coming about that as I work with Dr. Mary and a few other incredible people. But his word is faithful. Joe is married in church, believing the truth, and being an incredible husband and father. Has completely broke the cycle of which he was born into. So if you have any questions and you have any comments, please hit me up there at onelovesociety.love. That's onelovesociety.love. Some of you have also gone and made sacrifices in financially supporting some of the work that I do, the internet, the mentoring program. I'm getting ready to do it, hopefully in 3 schools next month, starting them. And if giving is something that's not on your heart, that's okay. I'll never charge for the YouTube videos, because I have to trust that the Most High will provide for me using the people that he has ordained to be used to run the ministries and the outreach that he's called me to do and us to do. So I'm never offended, and I'm not upset when people may ask about my motives. Why should you not? A lot of people have come your way as wolves in sheep clothing, disguising that they're here to do the work of the Most High or of God. Later to find out most of their work went into having beautiful cars and silver gold toilet seats. And I love the Lord too much to use his resources for something so petty and so valueless. So anyway, thank you for tuning in for such a long video tonight. And again, I appreciate each and every single one of you. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate the teachings that you give me, the help that you give me. So until we talk again, shalom.